Okay, let's go ahead and get ourselves going again. Again, I'm trying to finish up about on time to respect your time.
No.
So a couple of interesting questions have come up. One is an eagle-eyed observer in the front row noticed that, who will remain nameless, not to put anyone on the spot, who's sitting in the front row, third one over from the left, but in the editing of the structure, as we're working with our materials, you actually have a choice of not only something called the surface pattern, but there's this thing called the cut pattern. What is that cut pattern for? You might ask. Someone might ask that, because it's a pretty good question. And here's what it's for. We can set that pattern. Oh, I'm going to give it something like a really small pattern, like the diagonal, so you might be able to see it. The surface pattern is how the wall appears, or how that material will appear when we're looking at it from the outside. Okay, so in an elevation, in a 3D view, if we're not cutting through, it'll look like that. Okay, the cut pattern is how it'll typically appear when we cut through it either in a section or maybe even a floor plan view. So if I go over to the floor plan, for example, and go zooming on in here, okay, this is the cut appearance. It's this pattern that's showing up in there. And really it's just sort of a way of graphically conveying people in black and white, what a material is. And there's a whole hierarcy of how we represent steel versus brick versus insulation. There's some standards. So that's where cut pattern plays in. Right? Another very relevant question that came up is, okay, great, I got this sort of big old space here. How do I figure out how big it is? Okay, and let's talk about that. And I will actually show you two different ways to figure out how big that is. Okay. One is sort of based on the notion of a room, which is a little bit imprecise, and one which is based on the notion of actually an area, which is precise. Okay, but room is actually a pretty good way to get started if you need a really quick answer. Okay. You may not think of this as a room, but it's a room. Well, it's defined. It's four walls anyway. Let me sort of put some interior walls in there too, just so you get a sense. Okay, now I got a couple rooms. I can put some doors in there. Doesn't really matter. Okay, I got 3 rooms there. So if I want to figure out how big that space is, then it'd be pretty easy to figure this out. It's rectangular, but if it was a little more obtuse, you might want to sort of. I'll make it a little more interesting. Okay, and then let me go ahead. I'm going to split this wall right here. And we'll show you how to do that in a second too. But, okay, that's a little more interesting. Okay, just to keep you motivated. Okay, we can compute this as rooms. If we do this by rooms, here's what we're going to do. We're going to declare that each of those different spaces is a room, and then just tally up the area of each of the rooms. Okay, and that's kind of the quickie way. And for what we're doing right now, that's probably sufficient. It's not 100% accurate, so in planning, we'd ultimately fix that. But to do by rooms, what we do is we go to the Architecture tab, and let me see if I can find it. There it is, Rooms and Areas. We can say we want to use the Room tool, and I'll make that a room. I'll make that a room, and I'll make that a room. Okay, and as I put the rooms in, it'll figure out, oh, 135 square feet, 90 square feet, 188 square feet. The good news is that's just information that's reported out of the model, so if someone stretches the building, okay, all the rooms update themselves. And this kind of works out pretty well. As you go through and use rooms, you really don't want to have to go through and keep your calculator out and keep track of all those. So if you actually want to go through and have a schedule which just tabulates that for you, we can set that up too. And how you would do that. And it's going to get a little detailed, so don't worry if this sort of flies by a little fast, because we'll talk about this some more. You can say we're going to schedule something, and I'm going to choose to schedule the rooms. The rooms is one of the objects we can schedule. Then I can sort of put all the areas in there. Maybe just that. That gives me just a little listing, and that's pretty close to what we want, but I'd like to put a subtotal in there. And again, don't worry, I'm going to fly through this kind of purposely very fast right now, but actually, Raj and Lottie are actually going to post some links to a video that explains this stuff in a lot more detail. Okay, so I got the schedule, that's looking pretty good. What I want to do is sort of put a little subtotal on it, so I can put a total down at the bottom. And then I can put a subtotal on it, so I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. So I can put a total down at the bottom. Then I have to say what to total. So again, don't worry if this is going by fast because we'll go through this in more detail. Calculate the totals. Okay, hey, I'm pretty good, 479 square feet. Now in your 500 square foot building, that's actually kind of okay. I'm asking for 500 square feet. Your 479, super. Your 505, super. Your 525, great. Now don't stay up all night. If it's 5,000 square feet, okay, you got a problem. So tally it up, but for what we're doing for this one, you don't have to be down to 1% accuracy or something like that. You have a little bit of leeway on this one. Yeah. Planning divisions aren't so kind. They actually care down to that last 100th of a square foot. So enjoy the freedom while you have it. Okay, now rooms is actually a pretty good way to do things as a starting point. But let's talk about rooms. In fact, if I hover over this room, I might have to tab to get the room. There's the room. You can actually sort of even see where the boundary of the room is. And let me kind of hover there. Can you see where the boundary is? It's that little blue line. Okay. So the problem with rooms is rooms only go to the inside of the walls. Oh, they actually go to the face of the walls. So the problem is, as buildings get really big, all that little footage in between the walls, that actually adds up to be an awful lot of square footage. Okay, so properly, in terms of usable square foot, that's the usable square foot, especially if you're in real estate and you're charging out for commercial, they care about that space between the walls because someone's going to pay for it. Okay, so rooms is a great starting point. We can do that where we need to be for assignment 1. But if you really want to get the answer, okay, let me show you a different way of doing it. Okay, and that's to create something called an area. Okay, areas don't hover to the insides of the walls. Now, to do areas, there's actually a different type of plan. And again, don't worry, you don't have to do this for this assignment, but I'll just let you know what's coming. We'll do it in the future. Hang on, I gotta find, there's the plan views. I'm sorry, right there. There's different types of views. One thing's called an area plan. And an area plan is gonna look amazingly like a floor plan. Although we can even sort of build in this notion of, are we looking at rentable area or gross building? Okay, it's actually going to suggest, hey, I know how to do this. Would you like me to put in some boundary lines that sort of, correspond to the gross area in the building? That's usually a pretty good choice. Say yes to that. It puts in some purple lines. You notice it's put purple lines all the way around the boundary of the building, which is probably pretty close to what you want. In fact, you can even have them put those purple lines right to the exterior face of the studs, which is what you really want. That sort of buys you a couple square feet in the end. Kind of really say that. But those purple lines define an area. And that area includes all the space between the walls. All we need to do now is basically tag the area to report what the value is. So the area is everything inside those purple lines. And to find out what it is, I'm going to go back to that architecture. And the yellow guys are the areas. I'll just come through. I think it actually may be in there. So I can probably, no. Say load an area tag. Right there. See if I can drop one in there. Okay, check this out. There's actually 571 square feet in that building, not 497 or whatever it was, 479. Oh, okay, I take that back. I stretched the building. So I think that's a pretty big difference. Still says 479. Let's come back over here. It is 479 versus 571. That's a lot of square footage. It's actually a pretty big building. Well, no, not all that big. We should think about why that is. I will think about why that is, but not right now. Because actually, it is there. And the nice thing is those purple lines, we can sort of subdivide things into sub-areas, but there really is a difference. Okay, so for what we're doing, you can go just with the room areas if you want, or just the rooms. Just kind of tab on here, but ultimately we use areas instead. That's the way you get an accurate measure. Yeah. Raj will work on this now and figure out why it seems to be so different, but if we finally reason it through, we'll figure out it's actually right. Oh, no worries. It'll be right. It rarely lies to me. Occasionally. Okay, so we got walls, we got areas, we got that stuff going on. So the walls feel pretty good in the scheme of things. Different wall types, all that kind of stuff. Indeed. Let's go ahead, we're going to put some doors and windows in, and then we'll do curtain walls. And then we'll be sort of just perfect with the other class, and we'll be all kind of lined up, which makes me feel good. So let's put some windows in this building. And as we go through and put windows in, again, you can go through and in the default template when you open it up, let me switch over to that. You'll see that the default template doesn't really have all that many windows in it. We go over to the window tool in that default template, and all that was in there was, oops, window tool. Choose that. This lowly little fixed window. Oh, it's 36 inches wide. There's really not much variation in it. But it's pretty smart. In fact, if I take that window and I go dropping it into a wall, like a nice compound wall like this, it actually does a pretty good job in terms of intersecting, taking out things. It's actually pretty smart as windows go. Okay. As you place windows, one of the few things you have to worry about is every window is understood as having a default sill height, how high it should be off the ground. If you place it in 3D though, it won't honor that. You have to sort of specify the sill height manually, or you might have to override it. If you put it in floor plan views, it'll always honor the default sill height. Okay, so that's one of the few differences. So the default template just has a few window types. If you open the starting point file and you're working with that one, you'll see there's actually a couple more types. So here we are, we're hanging around in our floor plan view. We say we want some windows. And you'll see, oh, have we loaded in some nice windows for you? We have awning windows. Those are the ones that flip. We have casement windows. Those are the ones that hinge on the side and swing out. We have some double hung windows. Double hung windows, oh, a lot of older houses have those. The back pane slides up behind the front pane and the bottom part's open to the outside. We have some fixed windows, some transom windows. Those are little tall windows, typically above doors or very high up in the wall, maybe a clear story. Got a lot of nice windows to work with. And if you want to load in some other windows, super, go out to the library and pull those in. Same thing with the doors. You go to the doors, the default library or default template just has that single flat panel door. Here we have, oh, sliding closet doors, single glass doors like the one in the room here that has like a glass panel to it, double glass doors. So just the starting point has a lot of things in it that will just help you get started. If you get started and you don't start with a starting point, we can always copy these things into your project. Okay, but the starting point will make it easier for you. So let's go ahead and put in some windows as a starting point, and we can do the same thing with doors. Gonna grab some windows. I'm going to say, how about, oh, one of those nice, let me go for, how about that casement window? No, you can't really see that very well. Let me go for the double hung window. That you can actually see. And I'll go dropping a window here on the front. Super. I'll go dropping another window in there. And, oh, as I'm dropping windows, that's not so awful. Yeah. Because it's a 6 foot tall window, the head height's at 7, the sill height's assumed to be 1 foot. So since I'm putting it in the floor plan view, it'll honor that. Okay. Otherwise, I might have to adjust it around. I'll put another window in here and everything's going good. Now, as you're placing windows, very often as you put windows in there, you're going to find out you want sort of a regular pattern to them, kind of a spacing to them. You know, they tend not to be scattered around unevenly. So what you can do is after you place windows is start actually adjusting the dimensions. And if you click any window, you'll see we can get some dimensions, some temporary dimensions, which will sort of tell us how far things are apart. So these are a little unevenly spaced now. I might decide I want to put these two things 4 feet apart from each other, at which point I can go through and just sort of type in 4, 0. What will happen now is for this dimension, the blue object is the one that's going to move. That's the one that you unlock, it's up in the air, you're saying that you're going to change it. So that's going to slide over. If I had chosen that one, it would slide it over this way. Okay, so I'll say 4 feet. Pop it over. Come over here, I can make that 4 feet. And you can do that. That actually works out just fine. Okay. Windows are, they're not so smart. Let me tell you this. If you do something like that, it'll overlap them. So it won't stop you from doing things that won't work physically. You might complain a little bit, but it won't stop you from doing that. But you can go ahead and put in your windows like that and just kind of adjust them manually one at a time. And that's kind of okay, that works. But there's quicker ways to do it that I want to show you about that you might want to control. Okay, let us talk about the dimensions for just a minute. Because I got these dimensions between the windows. For example, this dimension over here between the windows, it is 4 feet across. Okay. That dimension is a temporary dimension. It's temporary because it only shows up as long as I have the window selected. As soon as I click away, it disappears. If you want a dimension to actually stick around because you want to use it for something, and we can use dimensions in 2 ways. We can use dimensions to report information to us, like we're going to put on floor plans and share with other people. We can also use dimensions to actually lock things together and constrain them. So for example, if I want those 2 windows to be 4 feet apart, and I actually always want them to be 4 feet apart, no matter what happens, okay, I can actually create a lock that'll do that. And here's how you do that. You'll come on in, and we got the dimension, kind of temporary, can't hang on to it. If you click this little glyph, it'll make it a permanent dimension. Okay, and now it'll stick around. Okay. If you choose a dimension that's hanging around, you'll see that you can lock dimensions. Let's talk about what this means. Okay, the right-hand side is that 4 feet. If I lock that forever until time ends, at least until this model's over, those things will stay 4 feet apart from each other. If I lock this one, that window and that wall will always stay 15 feet apart. So let's talk about where that's useful. So here you are hanging around, you got that 4 feet, let me lock that one. That's kind of useful when you want to do this. When I want to move a window, okay, and I always want to make sure those windows keep that same dimension relative to each other. So a lot of times we do that. If you really want to keep them locked in, yeah, lock them in there. Another constraint that's actually kind of a good one is, let me go ahead and choose this one, and I'll make that dimension visible too. That's 4 feet away from the outside wall. Okay. If we honor that kind of dimension and lock it, here's what happens. If I move the wall, okay, the windows move with it, so they'll always be 4 feet away from the wall. Now, warning, Will Robinson, okay, it also has this effect. If I move the windows, well, no, it's actually gotten smarter. That's good. It used to be it'd slide the wall, okay, which is probably not what you want to have happen. In this case, it's saying, you know, you've tried to sort of put some constraints in there. I don't think this makes much sense. Would you like me to remove the constraints? Just suggesting perhaps you might want to remove those. And you can remove those or just cancel the operation. So constraining things actually turns out to be a really useful thing to do sometimes when you want to keep things. If you think about a big building like Y2E2 or almost any building, pay attention to the windows and you'll see they tend to follow very regular patterns. They line up at the top, they're sort of spaced relatively evenly. Unless you're looking for an architectural feature which sort of has randomness in it, often windows, there's a little more order to it. Okay, and it's just pleasing to the eye. We like that. Okay, as you're placing things like windows, let me give you sort of another variation on a scheme. This will also work for doors. Okay, if you go through and put in a window, something like that, and you want to have several of them, you can go ahead, as opposed to going up to the top and always choosing it from the menu and placing it, you can do something called a copy. Okay? And if you like drafting commands, there's all these sort of modifications in your copy, mirror, move, align. Copy's right here. What copy does is it says, great, I want to get that thing that's selected and make a duplicate of it, but I'm also going to indicate some sort of displacement for the copy. So what I can do is click some point that I want to measure from. It could be the end point or the middle, wherever you want. Drag on over. Okay, and wherever I drop it, it'll put the copy. But I can also go through and just type in a dimension. If I have a precise dimension, I want to leave that over. So copying is kind of a good thing. It's just always, it saves the trouble of placing and then moving, because you sort of get a make the same as this and displace it all in one operation. So copying is very useful for you. Now, if you can handle the notion of copying, okay, let's take it one step further. What if I actually wanted to copy a whole bunch all the way down the building? Okay, so copy a whole bunch of times is called arraying something. Okay, and here's how that works. So I'll just undo this. I got that single window. So here's what I want to do. I want to take that window, I want to make, 8 of them going all the way down the building, kind of some set distance, and have it just very quickly generated and kind of placed at that distance. And here's how I do it. Up here in the tools, we have the copy tool. Okay, that one we're used to. The array tool lets us make either linear arrays, or actually radial arrays, which is kind of cool, around some center point. We will choose the array tool. Let's take a look at the options. We have this notion of linear or radial. Okay, let's keep it linear. Group and associate. I'll leave them grouped. We'll talk about that in a second too. How many do you want to put in there? We go ahead and put 8 in there. Then we have the choice. Are we going to say where the second one is going to be, or we're going to say where the last one is going to be? And that has an impact. So second one, I'll leave it at that for right now. We'll say great. I'm going to choose some space here. I'm going to pull over to where the second one will be. In this case, 8's probably a little bit mini. It's kind of hanging off the side of the building. That's what it's complaining about right there. Let me go back to the array. I need a bigger building or less array. I'll make them like 6 of them. Second, take it here, move it over there. There's the array. Notice it says 6 right there. I can change that. The cool thing about arrays is, you can always go back. Let me just kind of accept that. You can always go back and change things if we want to. It's complaining because one of the windows is lining up with one of the interior walls right now. That's okay, I'll live with that for right now. With arrays, you can tab. If I can get the array. Can I not get the array? Oh, there it is. It's kind of hiding under there. Okay. You can always change it. So if later you decide you want 4 or 5 or whatever it is you want in there, you can always go back and just change the array. Okay, and it'll sort of space them out again. Okay. The difference that you have to be aware of in terms of arrays is this as you specify them. Okay, let's go back and we'll do the array again. Array, I'll say, in this case, I'm going to get 5 of them, but I'm going to specify the last one. Okay. Specifying the last sort of fills in between the two. So let's think about the difference. If you specify the second, every one you add, the space between them will always be the same. It'll just kind of add new ones, so the total length will be a difference. Specifying the last is the end point will always be the same. It'll just kind of change the spacing between them. Yes?
First click that you're doing, are you establishing which part you want to start the copying? I don't know how to say this, but
it's the displacement point. It's really it's sort of like the handle on the original object. That when I move over to the new location, the new object should, where I'm clicking is that same point in the new location.
So if you clicked on the other side of the window, would it said when you clicked again, would it put the other side of that window at that point?
Yes. So let me get it. I'll do that slower because that's actually a very good question. Okay, so here we are. We're hanging around. Got some graphical goobers in there. Okay, so zoom that back up. I'm going to array that. So where I'm clicking is, I can either sort of say that I'm going to click on the center point or the end point, whatever it is. And when I go clicking, it's going to basically, where I click is that same point on the object in the new location. Okay, so if you do an array this way, there's 5. It spaces them. I'll change that. No, I want 7 of them. It just basically spaces them in between. Okay. And arraying turned out to be a really, really handy thing. Yes?
And once you have the array, how can you switch, like, they go to the outside of the inside? I can't choose something.
Yeah. Once things are arrayed, they're grouped in this kind of funny way because I left group and associate on. And let's talk about where that's a good thing. I'm going to switch back to the 3D view. Arrays are kind of special clumps of elements. Okay, they're actually clones of each other. Okay, so if I want to change any of the clones or change all of the clones, what I have to do is I choose the element. Okay, you'll notice it actually gets sort of this funny blue box around it because it's a member of an array. No worries. We'll say that we want that thing, but then we'll say that we want to edit the group, and that actually opens it up so we can change it. So if we edit it, you get to this funny mode where things are grayed out. And now we can go through and change that element. So I can flip it if I want to. I can change its size if I want to. Whatever it is that I want to do, I can change that one. And when I say finish, what will happen is it'll not only change that one, it'll change them all. Okay, so cloning can tend to be a very useful thing because if I make a change to any of them, yeah, it'll sort of affect them all. If you clone things and later on you decide, no, hey, I really don't want that one to be a clone of all the others. It's unique, it's special, I want to change it separately. What you can do is choose that one and you can ungroup it and then it takes it out of the set. Okay, so now the other 7 or 6 will change, but that one will be different. Okay, so you can always do that. So all this kind of cloning, arraying, this is actually very useful stuff. And these same sort of principles are going to apply to doors and to windows. It's just really placing objects, like to furniture too. So just some general techniques. So the things to remember, oh, you can lock things, you can constrain things, copy them, array them. Those are all little tricks that will help you when placing things. So things are, say, all regular lined up. Okay. Let me give you one last kind of windowy thing to work with, and then we'll actually show you how you put these things on sheets and finish up for the night. And that is, okay, windows are kind of cool, walls are kind of cool independently. In a lot of modern architecture, we have this weird hybrid, though, between a window and a wall, called a curtain wall. And you see a lot of them kind of hanging around in Y2E2 in a lot of our buildings here. And let's talk about how you create that. It turns out curtain walls are really just another type of wall. Okay. So, for example, if I want to go through and change this wall here to a curtain wall, all I really have to do is go pop it on down in the menu, and you'll actually find curtain wall. Okay, and it'll change it to, as a starting point, a big old piece of glass. Okay. Not exactly useful yet, but getting close. Okay, big old piece. You've got some of the material property you want. The problem is that 20-foot tall, 80-foot long piece of glass can be a very expensive thing to get out on site. It's be hard to work with. You're not going to really build it that way. Okay. So curtain walls actually have properties too, like everything has properties. Okay. And if you choose that curtain wall, you will see that one of its properties, and there's the type or the instance properties, but we're not going to change those. We're going to actually change the type properties. Is this notion of really how is it subdivided up? So we can actually break things into a horizontal and a vertical layout. So in terms of the grids that run vertically, we can say that, oh, I want this to be, a fixed distance, so every 5 feet we'll have a vertical grid. Horizontally, I'll make that a fixed distance also. I'll make it like 8 feet. Okay, say okay. We've got a little bit of gridding in there. That's not very interesting. That's not a very big wall. But you can sort of see it's broken into panels of glass now. Okay, halfway there. Got panels at least. In a lot of countries now, we actually have panels of glass. We just seal in between them, and it's a very nice, clean look. If you want to use a very conventional curtain wall like we tend to use here, we'll have these aluminum mullions between them that actually go ahead and help support the glass. So in the same thing, the curtain wall definition, we can go through and edit it, and we can actually specify there's different sorts of mullions. So let me see if I have, the rectangular mullion, I'll put that in just as a starting point. We can, again, get to all sorts of detail in here, but I'm going to set this up very simply. Okay, and now we have a curtain wall that has that basic layout. The cool thing about the curtain walls is because they're tight and it's dictated by a formula, in terms of what's going on, as you stretch the wall, that pattern will be repeated automatically for you. So whatever we need to do, that'll sort of work. We can even go through and make this little area over here a curtain wall. That kind of, I'll just warn you about it. It's going to be a little bit strange. Okay, in that, just as we go working with it, as a curtain wall with 5-foot panels, and it's not very big, it's going to give you a very rough surface. What you can do here is actually change that if you want to. I can either make it a different type that's smaller. Maybe I'll do that curtain wall with small panels. That might be easier. Okay, and I'll make that like a 2-foot spacing instead. It'll be truer to the circle if you do something like that. Okay, so that's enough to get you going on the walls, door, window stuff. Let me, as we finish today, in the last few minutes, to say, hey, great, we got this design. We want to go ahead and get this on some sheets so we can actually get it all turned in. Just kind of walk you through the back half of the assignment. And here's what you got to do. Okay, We actually have set up some sheets for you in the starting point file, but if you need to create some new sheets, you can do that too. We'll go to View. We'll say it's New Sheet. It'll give you the option of choosing some sort of a frame, title block, which is sort of frames the drawings. And you can choose D size, that's kind of 24 by 36, which is very common for architectural drawings for houses and things of that scale. You'll see, it's really just a frame, there's a little bit of title block there, has our name of our class, has a project name there. That's just a holder. And what we're going to do is get these views and put them on that sheet. Okay. So, as you're placing views on the sheet, what we sort of talked about the first time was that you can go here, back to this view, okay, and drag that onto the sheet. But before we drag it on the sheet, we sort of want to change the scaling and the cropping and really make it fit the sheet the way we want it. Now, what I'll tend to do is actually take that view, there's just this one view of the first floor. What I'll actually do is actually duplicate it so I can have several views of the first floor that I can crop in different ways depending on what I want to show, add annotations to it. Just kind of give yourself a little more control about what's on the sheet so I can still make changes to the main model without actually affecting how it appears on the sheets. So how that works is I can take that view and I'll duplicate it, take copy of first floor, and I'll just call this the first floor plan proposed. Okay, it's actually the same as the first floor right now, but I can now do things like I'll crop it, and then I'll move the crop boundary in so I'm not looking at the property lines, I'm just looking at the house. I might put some dimensions on there. So I'll put some dimensions from this wall to that wall to that wall. So the notion of dimensions, these are known as annotations, and they're just local to this one view. So even though I'm putting them on in this view, okay, those aren't going to show up in the other view. So they're not on first floor, they're just sort of on this one right here. So I can just sort of go through and customize that one view so it has exactly what I want to see. And then what I'll do is just drag that view onto the sheet, all neatly cropped and annotated just the way I want it. So it used to be the idea that you have sort of a floor plan which is related to the whole level, which I would call your working view, that you kind of keep on making changes to and just show everything and have fully expose all the guts so you can sort of see what's going on. But then you'll have copies of that view where you're hiding different information or filtering different information out depending on what you want to present. Okay. So in that same sense, I got the floor plan view on there. You say, well, we don't have a roof plan, so we don't want to deal with that yet. Let's take a look at the elevations. Ah, that's a beautiful elevation. We'll just go ahead and adjust the crop on that. I could duplicate it if I want to, but I'll keep it simple for today. I'll zoom on in there, or crop it on in there. I'll put that on the elevation sheet. Let me get the west elevation too. That's not too bad looking. Maybe crop that in a little more closely. I'll put it on the sheets. Notice kind of a groovy thing happens when you bring it onto the sheets. If you bring it to the point where it's kind of in line with the other view, if you get the view so that it's horizontally lined up, so the levels match and things like that, it'll actually indicate, okay, if you put it there, boom, it's like actually directly across from each other. And that's a nice thing to do, because then it's easier to follow the sheets. They just look very neat if everything lines up across the horizon, things like that. Similarly, I can take that 3D view, put it on the sheet. Okay, you got all these sheet views. Super. I got sheets, I got plans, I got elevations, hopefully I got some furniture in here, whatever it is. You are ready to turn this thing in. Okay, well, sure, a roof or something like that, but you'll finish the model. There's no harm, you can set up the sheets first and finish the model later. That's kind of the cool thing about this. But go ahead and get the sheets set up so you're looking pretty good there. You're ready to turn things in, and here's how you do it. We want to get out a file that has not only these sheets that have all these views, kind of these line drawings that are pictures of the model, but we also want to include the 3D model itself. And here's how you do it. this whole notion of sending things out all happens under the Revit application menu. And there's this choice called export. And under export, there's a lot of different formats we can export in, but the one I'm going to recommend using is this DWFX file. Okay, and if you choose that, here's what you get. By default, when you say you want to export, it'll always start with, oh, I bet you want to export the thing you were looking at last. Okay, so it's going to recommend, hey, I can export sheet A2 because that's where you were looking. Okay, that's pretty good. But if I'd also like to get sheet A1 and 3D models and other things, I'm actually going to shift that around. So not just the current view, let's go and grab everything and choose from like a little menu of like all the things that we might put in there. So as opposed to just staying with the current view, I'll pull down to this other thing, which is the whole sheet set. And I can pull down, there's a lot of choices in here. I'm going to say all the views and sheets in the model. That's going to give me the full list of everything that's available. And you get a big old menu of everything. Okay, so here, I'm going to say include sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, sheet 4. And that's going to get all the sheets. Okay, that'll get all the line drawings so I can print them out. But if you also want to include the 3D model itself, okay, so that Raj can go through and spin your model around and interrogate it and take a good close look at it, you'll include the 3D view, the default 3D view. By including the model in addition to the sheets, okay, boom, you're actually including the full 3D model in addition to the line drawings. Okay, so get those both in there. The 3D view, the sheets. Go ahead and say next. It'll ask you where you'd like to put that. I'm going to call it, oh, CATS assignment 1. And I only took the course for 2 units, so I put 2 at the tail end there. Say OK. And then that is the file that you're going to upload to the Dropbox folder. Okay. Open it up, take a look, make sure it really has the sheets and the 3D model. Okay. But that's really what you're going to do at the tail end of the assignment. Okay, so that's kind of start to finish. You know, short of some more detailed modeling. But if you want to, you know, even with what you know now, go ahead and just create the sheets. You can really get it all geared up and ready to go, just with the idea that you're going to complete it a little bit further. So it doesn't matter if your roof isn't complete yet. Set up the sheets, get it all ready. When your roof is complete, after you answer a question or two, you'll kind of keep on going. Okay, so let's stop and pause there. It's about the end of class. Let's see if there's any sort of questions to kind of get you going. Thursday, what we're going to do is go ahead and do those floors and the roofs and some of the other things that are missing in action that you need to complete the model. But that's kind of the general flow of it. So just edit, work with the wall types, the windows, the doors. If you can, see if you can sort of come up with your general idea of what your 500 square feet looks like, about where the walls and the general size will be located. We'll go back on Thursday with answer some specific questions about how you get the furniture in and set up the plumbing fixtures and handle the funded roof type that you have in mind. But see if you can get sort of a basic design down, because then on Thursday you'll have better questions. In terms of really, and chances are your question is going to be the question that half the rest of the room has. So try it out and we'll answer some questions together. Okay? Beauty. Okay, let us wrap up for the day then.